I wish you a wonderful day today. I'm blessed and having a wonderful one as well. Today I want us to explore a topic: God can turn your mess into your message. When you go to a potter's house, you normally find the potter busy working on a pot that they are putting together. They are molding and fashioning to eventually come up with a pot that can be sold, that can be used, whatever the case may be. By the desk table where the potter is working, it is so messy because there is clay all over, there is water, there is some tools, whatever the potter is using to make that pot. The place is so messy. But you look at what the potter has put together at the end of the product, you will be amazed to find a wonderful pot, a beautiful pot. Why is it messy when you arrive at a time when the potter is busy working? It is because that product is still work in progress. I want to say to you today, we are all work in progress. We are not yet complete. We have not yet arrived where we are supposed to be. We are not yet perfect. God is working in us both to will and to do of His good pleasure, until that day when He arrives in His glory and this immortal body puts on immortality, and we are changed in the twinkling of an eye to be like Him, and we see Him as He is. Friends, we are still work in progress. So don't be too hard on yourself, and you'll find that you have a life that is turned upside down, that you cannot tell where you're coming, where you're going, where you are. You are just like that pot at the potter's house that the potter is busy working on. Today, Jesus is the pot maker. He is the potter. He is working on us. So I want to say, as we look at one or two stories, consider this and don't be too hard on yourself. Trust Him, the pot maker, the potter Jesus, to work in you a transformation, a change in your situation. I'm thinking of a story that is found in the book of John chapter 4, where we find Jesus speaking to a Samaritan woman. Jesus leaves the land of Judea, goes through the land of Samaria on His way to Galilee. Now, there was no good communication between the Samaritans and Jews, and Jesus, being a Jew, He walks through this land knowing that well. After all, women and men, particularly between Jews and Samaritans, did not talk to each other. But Jesus, when He's tired during the day, He sits by a well, and in that time, a Samaritan woman comes by. And Jesus greets and asks this woman for water. And the woman says, "But say, how is it that you speak to me as a Jew and you ask for water from me?" Jesus, in conversation with this lady, he says, "If only you knew the gift of God, and instead you ask me of the water, you would receive the living waters. You would not be thirsty again." And the woman then requests for Jesus to give him the waters, the living waters. And Jesus says, "Go and call your husband." And the woman says, "I don't have a husband." Jesus says, you said well, because even the man that you are with now is not your husband. The woman was amazed beyond measure. There is some details that I have left deliberately, but I'm following this particular point that I want to emphasize on. The woman in amazement that this man must be a prophet, he then asked more questions. Are you greater than our fathers? They said, we worship in this mountain, and you Jews say worshiping must happen in Jerusalem. The conversation goes on. They are getting to talk more and more information that is relevant. And the disciples come and they arrive and they find Jesus talking to this woman. Knowing the culture that existed at the time, they are tight-lipped. They can't even talk. They are actually amazed that Jesus is speaking to this woman. And the conversation goes on. Eventually, when the woman heard that what Jesus had said to her, in amazement and in excitement, she leaves the jar on the ground and literally runs back to the village and tells everybody, come see a man who has told me everything that I have ever done. People immediately left their homes and followed this lady, running back to the well, where they find Jesus still seated there. And Jesus ministers, the record says, ministers to them. And they asked him to stay 2 more days, and he speaks to the community of Samaritans, something which Jews did not do. Why? Because he is God. He has the love of God, the love of mankind, which does not discriminate. This woman, who used to have men after men, is changed in a moment when he understands, gets to know that Jesus was the Messiah. The point that I did not reveal, which I'm revealing now, is that Jesus did reveal to this woman that I am the Messiah. You find that in verse 26. And when this woman heard about this, she was excited that she had found the Messiah. A point to note is that this is the first person Jesus revealed his true identity, that he was the Messiah. So this woman then becomes the first evangelist, the first witness to carry the good news of a Messiah that has been found. And she goes to tell everybody. What an honor that she had to be the first person to go and tell everybody about a Messiah. Well, when you look at it, he had been going with his disciples. His disciples still did not understand or comprehend that he was indeed the Messiah. Jesus turned the mess of the woman, the messy situation, and it becomes her own message. And many people are saved. They hear the call and they heed the call because of her witness. This is the God that we serve, who turns our mess into a message. Think again about another example, which is that of Moses. Moses being raised by the king's place, Pharaoh, in Egypt. At some point, he kills a man, buries him on sand. Little did he know that somebody had seen what had happened. Eventually, when he finds out that he was sin, he runs away. Problem that he had, which he did not want to accept, he was struggling with, is a problem of impulsiveness, a bad temper. Many of us have got different challenges. You could have killed a person just like Moses. You could have been an adulteress like the Samaritan woman. You could be somebody who has gone through things that are considered the worst and may be carrying the maximum sentence in the courts of this world. Atrocious. You are even ashamed to talk about them. But I want you to know today, regardless of your past, which do not actually determine your future, you can have your life turned around by the God who turns our mess into a message, which is your personal testimony. So don't be afraid and ashamed to an extent that you cannot help someone, hold someone by the hand regarding your past experience and turn it into a message of how God saved you, taking you from the guttermost into the uttermost. This is the nature of the God that we serve. Back to the story of Moses. When he runs away with a bad temper problem, God takes him to look after some wayward sheep. For 40 years, he receives training of animals that are impulsive way more than him. So he is found in a school where he is being taught to be patient. So he learns the trade. He earns his badges in being a patient man in the 40 years that he's looking after sheep. And after 40 years, God then calls him and says, Moses, go back to Pharaoh. You are going to tell Pharaoh, let my people go. The long story we know. And Moses, who had a bad temper, now is patient, now is loving, and now he is kind. God turned his situation into a different one altogether. God can do it. He has done it before, and he can do it again. I can assure you of that. You think of King David. King David was not just a liar. He was a murderer. He killed Uriah the Hittite because he had committed adultery with his wife Bathsheba. We know the story. If you visit the Bible and read that account, he tried to lie his way out of the whole situation. But when he was found and he realized the mess in which he was, he cried out for the mercy of God. And God changed David to an extent that we read the account of David when God says about David, this is a man after my own heart. This is a man after my own heart. What an honor. Regardless of the past, which is so messy, God can do this for you. And I can assure you, he will do it for you. Just put your broken pieces on the table so that the potter can work on you again. And he will change your life around. In closing, I just want to share a verse that I like so much. Ephesians 2, verse 8 and 9. For by grace are you saved through faith, not of works, lest any man should boast. It is the gift of God. It is not about your works, but it is the grace of God that saves us. And finally, I want to read Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. He is acquainted with our weaknesses. He went through the journey that was most difficult than anybody else, yet without sin. So he knows what you're going through and is willing to hold you by hand and save you from your situation. Turn your mess into your message.